Okay, folks, it's 7 o'clock. Let me call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. We have a very full agenda for our discussions tonight with several public hearings, plus going over several different measures. But we are going to start off with something that's slightly out of order because of the scheduling conflict that a couple of the people here have. So instead of immediately starting with general business, we're going to start with one of the public hearings, which is specifically on the resolution to provide a contribution of $5,000 to the Chevy Chase Fire Department for ongoing operating and expenses and associated capital expenditures. There's a public hearing. So Ron, let me turn it over to you first to set out the procedure that we'll be following for the public hearing before we take a vote.
Sure. So this is just a hearing on a contribution. So we don't have any particular format to follow other than you can ask for the applicant if they have any additional presentation to make, and if not, then ask for questions from the council, and then questions, comments from anyone else attending tonight's meeting. Oops, my camera's not on. Sorry about that.
All right. Yeah, very good. That sounds fine. Good. Thank you. All right. So please, introduce yourselves.
Thank you. And thank you for putting us first. As you know, we have our own meeting that follows this.
Right.
I'm Julie Trocchio. I live at 4123 Leland Street. And for the last year, it has been my honor to represent the town to the firehouse, Chevy Chase Firehouse. And that is the building that is on Connecticut Avenue next to the library. I represent the town along with Barbara Bransky, and she is also a volunteer EMT, and John Bird, who is the president of the board. The fire station represents 10 different group sections of Chevy Chase, such as the Hamlets, North Chevy Chase, Martin's Addition. We are one of 10. And when I first joined the board, I found out that some of the sections, not all, but some of the sections make an annual contribution to the firehouse, but we do not. The town of Chevy Chase does not. I figured that must be an oversight, so I contacted Irene and I said, do you know anything about this? She said the issue hadn't come up before. And so that is how we ended up here tonight. Here is what I have learned. The Chevy Chase Fire Department gets most of its funding either from grants or the county government. Now, I say the county government, we used to get a budget from them every year, but now we have to request if we have an expense or a special project. And we sometimes get it and sometimes we don't. But we also ask for contributions. We have an annual appeal. Contributions are primarily used for capital costs. In the past year, we bought beds and we redid the fireplace. But primarily what we use these contributions for are emergencies. It looks like we might need a new roof before too long. If the air conditioning needs or plumbing needs to be an overhaul and has a major expense, that's what the contributions are for. So John and I are here to ask for a contribution this year, and hopefully you might think about making it an annual contribution. Thanks, John. But I'm also here to invite you to our open house, to invite all of you to our open house. And that is the Saturday. And I have some flyers here that I'll leave here. Lots of fun things for adults and for children. There's going to be a tour of the fire department. There is a demonstration of the Jaws of Life. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but I'm looking forward to that. The county has its bomb robot, and it's going to be there. So please come. Lots of giveaways for adults and children, including hats for children. So we hope that you'll come. John is here to answer questions you might have about the finances and anything else about the firehouse.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask if there's anybody, any of the residents who'd like to make a comment about this recommended contribution of $5,000. Deborah Zern, please. You need to stand up and go to the microphone, Howard. No, I'm sorry. Could you please go to the microphone?
Hi, I'm just wondering, what's the relationship between that firehouse and the one that's at Wisconsin and Bradley?
Great.
That's what I'm just,
The firehouse at Wisconsin and Bradley is part of the Bethesda Fire Department. Maybe it's not on.
It is on. It's on.
All right. The firehouse at Bradley and Wisconsin is part of the Bethesda Fire Department. We're from the Chevy Chase Fire Department. There's 19 local fire departments in the county, each with their own boards and their own volunteers and so on. So we're not directly related to them, but we are in the overall county.
I think the
setup.
practical point is that both firehouses serve the town, and they will answer the calls that come to them, along with the rescue squad as well. So we look to the help from both.
Right. When a call goes in, if you dial 911, they'll send the closest unit to your home.
Any other comments? Any comments from my colleagues? Any questions? Well, I'll speak. I think I'm sorry, ma'am. We're talking about a $5,000 contribution to support the Chevy Chase Fire Department, which serves our town. My own personal feeling about this is true. We have not been asked before, but we do understand that other communities, other Chevy Chases are helping out. There's a modest amount. I think we all realize the very severe financial constraints that the county is under, and that's only going to become more severe. We do have the means to help out, and I feel personally that it's something we can do and we should do. It's certainly an extremely important institution that we all count upon. Any other comments from anybody?
Is this intended just for this year or?
Yes, this vote is only for this year. The question of what we do in the future will take up with the budget discussions in the spring.
Understood.
Is there a motion then?
I'll move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well,
right.
Thank you very much. We
Make
certainly
$5,000
appreciate
available
that.
to you.
And we appreciate, again, you putting us first so that we can get to the other meeting.
Very good.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, have a good meeting.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're
Please
very
come to the
welcome.
open house.
And I'll leave some flyers right outside.
Here if you want. Yeah, you could leave them here and that way people can take them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now back to the regular order of business. The first will be the September 2025 financial report. Let me turn it over to Carlo, our treasurer.
Thank you, Mayor. So the financial report for the period closing September 30th. So that's a quarter of the way through the fiscal year. And so far, our expenditures are in aggregate at about 21% of our budgeted operating expenditures. So we are tracking expenses, within our budget. On the revenue side, we've received 9% of our budgeted operating revenue. But as I mentioned last time, and I'll probably mention it every time, our expenses are very consistent month over month, by and large, and our revenues come in periodically. So we are expecting our first big revenue receipt in the month of November. So nothing really to be concerned about there. There is a detailed report for those who want to look into the details by category for both revenues and expenses. And happy to address any questions if there are any.
My colleagues, any questions? We all know that the big enchilada comes next month when we find out the estimated payment that we'll make plus the make whole for last year. So that's when we'll really know how we sit for the year. But up till now, it's fairly quiet. Okay, Todd, over to you for your manager's report.
Thanks, Barney. I will review or highlight some of the key initiatives undertaken by staff over the past month. And they involve assistance with responding to proposed amendments to the Subdivision Regulation Amendment 2502, which is the companion piece of county legislation to ZTA 2502, which was recently passed related to workforce housing. And the subdivision regulation amendment would prohibit workforce housing on certain lots and limit lot consolidations for workforce housing to a maximum number of eligible lots. We'll be speaking about that particular issue later this evening. Staff communicated with the Montgomery County Police Department about possible speed cameras on Bradley Lane, and we've continued to review possible speed camera vendors and contracts if the town implements its own program. Just today, I met with another vendor who is the county's new vendor to discuss a potential contract with them and what they can offer. On September 19th, related to the same issue, on September 19th, Barney sent a letter to Chief Yamada, Montgomery County Police Department, indicating that we had some difficulty receiving a response from the Automated Traffic Enforcement Unit of the Police Department regarding when we might be able to see a temporary camera be placed on the north side of Bradley to monitor westbound speeds, and ultimately understood that further consideration had to be undertaken with respect to a permanent camera. Chief Yamada responded that they were in a transition of vendors currently. They were undertaking their own data collection effort and feasibility study, and they wanted to wait until they saw the final report from the SHA regarding Bradley Lane safety to ensure that a speed camera would be compatible with the other improvements SHA might make. In response to that, I have requested the MCPD study to see what data collection they've done and what their feasibility study shows, and that is the status of that request. Staff also communicated with the Montgomery County Department of Transportation officials about lighting on the Capitol Crescent Trail between Elm Street Park and the Capitol Crescent Trail Bridge. Specifically to request shields be placed on 2 lights from the entrance from Elm Street Park up the ramp to the bridge. We are trying to track that down. Barney asked a question in the meeting immediately preceding this meeting on the Purple Line Community Advisory Team meeting regarding this lighting. Ray Biggs, the Purple Line Project Director, indicated that he would get back to us in a week or so, that he's been working the issue, and then he would get back to us in a week or so with some additional information. We had asked when these lights would be energized, and I understand that Purple Line Transit Partners is working with the County Department of Transportation to set that date, and we would they would provide advance notice before activation. MCDOT, an MCODOT official indicated that since the CCT opening is scheduled for the spring or summer of 2026, the lights will be energized before the trail opens, since it's a safety and security related feature. Staff also attended the just concluded Purple Line Community Advisory Team meeting. We also met with Corso Chevy Chase representatives to discuss project coordination and timeline for construction. And that timeline was communicated to the community in the mayor's message, Barney's message, and the most recent edition of the forecast newsletter. Staff also communicated with the Montgomery County Police Department and Montgomery Parks officials on plans for the Capitol Crescent Surface Trail Phase 2 project, which is essentially the surface trail that runs along 47th Street in the town. The status of that is Parks. The only work that's been done thus far is they've staked out the construction area, and they've replaced the utility poles on the east side of the park. Parks is developing the final plans. They are at 100% design right now. They're developing final exhibits, and we're awaiting the signed memorandum of understanding to allow this project to proceed in the town right of way with certain conditions, with respect primarily to the maintenance of the improvements once they're completed. Staff also finalized plans for the proposed Ridge Street sidewalk extension. That's going to be subject to a public hearing this evening. We continued researching possible fire hydrant relocations along Bradley Lane. to either get them fully off the sidewalk because they're directly, some of them, there are two specifically, that impede pedestrian travel. And we've decided to undertake a survey initially to determine what our options are with respect to relocation of the hydrants off the sidewalk or partially off the sidewalk. Staff also scheduled a meeting on October 9th, tomorrow, with Pepco officials, as well as Mayor Rush and Councilmember Brancato to discuss storm response and power restoration efforts from the storm this past late summer. As some know, it was a pretty dismal response and there was a lot of miscommunication. So we're going to be talking to them about our experience and what they can do to improve their response and restoration efforts. Staff has begun town-wide concrete repairs, also pavement repairs on Leland Street and Woodbine Street, and we're undertaking a grate drain replacement in Sycamore Alley. Staff also submitted the FY25 Highway User Revenue Report, which effectively indicates how we've used highway user revenue funds to improve our roadways and sidewalks and transitways. We've renewed the town office lease. We did organize and attended Fall Trash and Treasures event. We managed the 2025 to 2027 parking permit renewal program. We organized and attended the volunteer appreciation event. We've also launched a Climate and Environment Committee resident survey, which has been advertised on the Town Crier and in the Forecast newsletter. We're currently supporting holiday donation drives by the Community Relations Committee and others, and we provided project support to town committees. And that concludes the staff report.
Thank you very much, Todd. Any comments from colleagues? It's been a busy month. Very good.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Now we open it for public comments. I'd like to say, because we have so many items, that I'd like to limit the comments to 2 minutes apiece. And also, please note, because we have public hearings, that if you wish to speak about a matter of the public hearing, you'll be able to speak during the public hearing. But this is the time to make any other comments, including the items that are just in the discussion part of our agenda, which include, for example, the Bradley Lane safety improvements. So this would be the time now if you wish to speak to that. Deborah, you wish to have a comment? Please go ahead.
Before I start, I'm Deborah Vollmer. I live at 7202 44th Street. I'm a longtime resident of this town. Before I start, has every member of the council received the written comments I sent via email this morning? Then I will be brief, knowing that there's a lot on the agenda. In past meetings also, I have addressed this issue about what's happening with town neighbors. I have been a long-term resident of the town. I have used Town Neighbors. It's a resource for sharing information and ideas among residents, dealing with when you find a lost pet on your property, traffic hazards, all kinds of issues that come up. Without going into a lot of detail, and you've all heard it, there was a disagreement over the posting of a message and whether it was repetitive or not. And I've already admitted that some of my emails were angry in tone, and I publicly apologized to that, but it wasn't a situation of one person being the villain and the other. And the thing is, the moderator has not admitted her role in this, and I very much want a peaceful resolution. I just want to be able to post messages like everybody else without being required to meet any special conditions unique to me and not required of other listserv members. And I recently sent a letter, email, followed by, well, I printed the email, sent it to Wicca's house because she said she had blocked my emails. And I suggested that in view of the Jewish holidays, that we ought to mend what is broken and care about each other as neighbors. And she accused me of appropriating her religion. And I think Wicca knows very well that my mother was Jewish. So whether I'm religious or not, under Jewish law, I'm Jewish. So this was very upsetting. But long story short, I just want to resolve this. And in the meantime, I think I think the town should stop endorsing the Town Neighbors listserv until and unless it is fair to all members, including myself. And so that is my request. Take off the link from the town website to Town Neighbors and the link from the weekly newsletter, the Town Crier, unless and until the moderator agrees to resolve this amicably, which is all I want.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you. Anybody else? Please, ma'am.
Thanks so much. My name is Monica Medina. I'm a longtime town resident. I'm very sorry. Okay. My name is Monica Medina. I live at 3912 Rosemary Street, which is on the other side of town, close to Connecticut Avenue, between Chevy Chase Elementary School and Connecticut Avenue. I've spoken to several of you. I've spoken to the town staff about a concern about the safety of the school children walking to school from Connecticut Avenue to the school. The one block of Rosemary Street is extremely crowded and congested during particularly the morning rush hour because lots of people are coming and going. There are lots of trucks. Anyway, there's been a bit of study about it. I know the Town Public Safety Services Committee is taking up this matter, but I had been told no one had ever raised it at a town council meeting. So I'm here to just raise it at the town council meeting and to thank you for looking into it. I do think it's a really important concern. The school kids are incredibly vulnerable running down the street. We have bikers who are biking to work because of the trail being closed now. It's an incredibly congested one-way street at this point, given parking on both sides. So thank you very much for giving me a minute just to say I'm concerned, and I look forward to working with you on it.
Thank you. And I understand you'll be participating or at the Public Services Committee because they'll be having it on their agenda next month. Right?
Yes, there are a lot of questions along the street about what might be possible. So, but I won't take up the council meeting with that. Perhaps we can continue that conversation. It would be great to have some sense of it before that meeting so that the conversation could be a really productive one.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, so my name is Edmund Crawley. I'm at 4105 Bradley Lane. And I want to talk about the safety on 4105 Bradley Lane. As you know, we've been in a lot of communication. I want to thank you all very much for pursuing this. So we received the report from the State Highway Administration. And particularly thanks to Rich, he sat through a very long meeting with all Bradley Lane residents the other day, and we came up with some following the options given to us by the State Highway Administration. The residents kind of agreed on what they saw as priority items. And I think there was a lot of agreement that whatever could be implemented fast was kind of would be prioritized. And so I think we have also 4 things which we thought are top of that list. One was narrowing the lanes from they're currently 11 foot to 10 foot, allowing an extra 2 feet of barrier of some kind of buffer between the sidewalk and the road, which at the moment is a real cause of alarm. The second one was putting some speed cushions down the road to slow the cars. I think Todd already talked a little bit about cameras, but we'd like to have cameras and preferably multiple cameras and definitely one on the whichever direction it is, but it doesn't have one at the moment. And finally, the dangerous intersection at Maple, the residents of the options provided by the State Highway Administration, the residents preferred the sort of lateral shift so that there was a small bend in Bradley Lane that would slow cars down at that point.
Thank you very much. We'll be discussing this later on tonight, but we'll take the opportunity to thank you and Grant for having brought together the residents of Bradley and having such clear and helpful communication with the council and with the Public Services Committee. So thank you very much, Evan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gerald Marco. I live on Bradley Lane, 4413. I've been living there for about a year plus, and I'm here for the same reason as we were just discussing now, safety of Bradley Lane. I'm just gonna read out of my points here since I wanted to keep it short, but I just want to reiterate basically the importance of the changes that are being planned on Bradley Lane and for the safety of it. And I'm basically on behalf of my family and the whole street, Bradley Lane there, and the neighbors. And we all want a safer street for my child, for everyone's child there that live in that street, for walking our dogs, which we do it multiple times a day, for my neighbors that just walk up and down, go to the grocery store every day. And I as well want to emphasize the importance and speed of acting on this issue, because we want to prevent the issues from happening before we start taking action or thinking about it, basically. So I appreciate all the work that has been done by the town, the county, and even state level that has been involved. And I think that this has been the perfect timing to act, actually, because we have the years now of the state and the county as well. And so we really want a solution as soon as possible. I know some of the neighbors that have been living there for 30 plus years have been discussing this since then. And we don't really want another 10, 20 years to wait for this. So if we can act as soon as we can, that would be appreciated. And we really appreciate all the work that was done with the studies and all of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any other comments on the camera? Participating by Zoom? I don't see anybody. Okay, sure.
I'm embarrassed to say I could barely hear a word anyone was saying because I've forgotten how bad the acoustics are in this room, and maybe we'll buy you a carpet or put on some flags down. But I live at 4101 Bradley, and I maybe
your name, man?
4101.
No, your name, please.
Oh, excuse me, Diana Lady Dugan, and Lady was my maiden name, and I only mention that not because I'm a dead collie dog, but because I picked out the house for my parents in 1953 as we were stopped at a stop sign at Bradley and Hillcrest. So I have a very dear and fond memory of Bradley Lane in all its incarnations and the degree to which East-West Highway has not taken up enough slack and a number of other things. I do think because there are only 4 houses on Hillcrest that I am not up to speed on the issues, but for people who live on Bradley and Hillcrest, if there's any interest in making it not being able to turn onto Bradley for those people who live on those 4 houses on Bradley and Hillcrest, it is really a major imposition. And whether it's a gardener or other people being able to come with their truck in and out. And I don't know if that is in the scheme of concerns, but there is, I think, a unique problem that we have. And I think we've been very respectful citizens, and we appreciate, and I'm sure I speak for everyone, and our colleague with the wonderful British accent has said it well, but we're very grateful for the thoughtful attention that's being given to this issue, because I do know very firsthand that Bradley Lane has become almost a speedway for a lot of cars, and yet we don't want to handicap the people who live right from Rosemary Circle to Bradley Lane. And I don't know what the plans are vis-a-vis on that, but I do think that that should be taken into account. And also the people who are coming to our houses and workers, and I'm going to be doing a bit of upgrading soon, so I'm going to be a little more attentive to workers being able to come. But I think you've got a very difficult issue of having a street that is the straightest street in all of Chevy Chase and probably almost good part of Northwest Washington, Chevy Chase, that it's a very tempting place to try and turn into a freeway. So I do appreciate you're trying to create a balance there, but we have to really keep in mind the balance of the people who live there actually on the street, as opposed to just trying to slow down the traffic. And I think your ideas of having signals and slow down and so on, I know in other areas it's quite effective. So I would suggest, and I am not familiar enough, I just literally flew in last night for other reasons, but that maybe whatever you do, to do it a little bit incrementally, to get credit for whatever it is you're doing, or say, gee, this is almost not worth what we're doing, because it sounds like you have a number of different partial solutions. So I guess the one thing I would suggest is that you try and be a little bit incremental, so you see what works best and maybe need to be upped a bit, like having another sign that flashes and things like that, that slows down the traffic and is going to be probably the most effective from my very modest understanding of what's going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is George Raylan. I live on 4425 Bradley Lane with my partner for the last 9 years. We own the house. We can only speak by experience. We actually were involved in a car accident with a speeder on Bradley Lane. He was coming from work, back from work, and this person was speeding so much that when the traffic stopped, he couldn't go anywhere because this is a very narrow street. He went onto the sidewalk, sideswiped our car, and then ended up hitting the pole that on the other side. So this is one of those like accidents you can see in a highway. And so when somebody says something related to a highway, that's what this is. In some cases, sometimes it happens. If somebody had been on the sidewalk, they would have been dead for sure. And we do walk our dogs, our kids are everywhere. That this is our main way to get in and out of our houses. And so we definitely want to thank you, because I know that you're serious about the matter. We are organized now, and we really want, again, what you said, anything you can do fast is our priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments? All right, hearing none, then we'll proceed to the next section of our agenda, which is public hearings. And the first public hearing is on the proposed sidewalk installation on Ridge Street. So Ron, now do you want to walk us through the procedure? And then I'll probably ask Dave if you could give a short presentation. Ron, you're on mute. It's very rare for a lawyer to be quiet, but.
My apologies. Yeah, so we're having a public hearing on the proposed sidewalk installation, and members of the public who want to comment, please wait till you're recognized by the chair and come forward to the podium. And, I would ask Dave to provide an update on this item.
Great. Dave, do you want to lead off, and then we'll let people talk?
Yeah,
just give a quick summary of the project to be helpful.
quick summary. Yeah, back in January, the town received a request from a resident to extend the sidewalk on Ridge Street to complete it from East Avenue to West Avenue. Currently, the sidewalk on both sides stops about 4 or 5 houses short of West Avenue. And so the council thought it was, something that was worth pursuing. We've done some design work, had a meeting with residents in the block back in June, and have come up with a plan to extend the sidewalk on the north side of the street behind the existing curb with the installation of some retaining walls to pick up some of the grades that are there and some adjustments to the existing driveways to make sure that they are traversable once the sidewalk's installed. So we've looked at trees and utilities and, the constraints with the topography and come up with the best plan to fit a sidewalk in that varies in width between 3 and 4 feet, depending on where it is and what we had to work around. So I know the residents in the block were sent a copy of the plans with the public hearing notice.
Thank you. Any comments from any of the residents about this proposal? Please.
My name is Jeff Marcusy and my wife Deborah Zarin. We live at 4402 Ridge Street. Appreciate what the council has done. We think you've taken into consideration the constraints. That's a reasonable plan. Right now, it's quite dangerous to walk down that street, and it's a standard route to go to Trader Joe's. So I think it's long overdue having a sidewalk, but now that it's come up to the council, you guys have been acting at a reasonable pace. And so I hope it proceeds as quickly as possible. And I don't see any problem with the current plan at all. And we're very supportive of it.
Thanks very much, Jeff.
Sorry, I just had a comment about this.
Provide your name again, please.
Yes, Gerald Marco on Bradley Lane 4413. I heavily use that street, so I really appreciate this change being done because I walk my dog there, and so always have to get off the sidewalk. And I had one question though. On the west is almost the same situation, especially on the not on the Bethesda side, but the other side of Chevy Chase. Was there ever any like thoughts or plans to add the sidewalk there, turning from Bradley to the right as you go to Wisconsin?
Bradley to the right.
So as you go toward Wisconsin, if you turn right, you either have to go to the other sidewalk, which I've had scenarios where cars just try to turn immediately. And I have to go to the other sidewalk to go to Trader Joe's, to walk my dog, to go to daycare. And I've always thought, why isn't there a sidewalk to the right side?
There is one on the, of course, on the west side of
Bethesda
West.
side, yeah.
Okay, but you're looking for one on the east side of West Avenue.
I was wondering if it was ever brought up and considered. That's it.
Not to my knowledge, but maybe at some time in the past. It's not certainly not recently.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Rich.
I think in like 2015, when they developed the plan for West, I think that was talked about.
I see.
Adding
Okay.
a sidewalk.
Any other comments from residents regarding this proposal? Okay, let me turn over to my colleagues. Are there any comments?
I'm on
sorry.
video here.
Yes, I'm sorry. I hadn't seen you. Please go ahead and speak.
Well, this is Marie Webster from 4425 Ridge Street. Probably the house most affected by this sidewalk, and I, want to commend Dave in particular for being very forthcoming and helpful with trying to figure out the best way to do this. But I just had one question for Dave before you. I don't know if you're voting on it tonight or what, but we've had the utilities people come by and make a huge mess in the front, and I talked to Dave about that, and we talked about some other changes from the plan that actually we received in the mail this week about the whole project. So I was just wondering if I will see another plan that has the changes to the wall and the driveway and all that before it's actually finalized and voted on, etc.
Yeah, I know we met last week. We're planning to incorporate the driveway change and the extension or the replacement of that small wall adjacent to the driveway. The town engineer who did the plan development was unfortunately traveling, so I haven't been able to get an updated set of plans out to you. But our understanding, because the we're gonna have to come onto your property to install the driveway, with the improved grades, there'll be a right of entry agreement that will have to get executed. And I can certainly go over, all the plans for that, but we are intending to make those improvements as part of the project.
We can incorporate that in our resolution tonight, so it's clear that we would be accepting those changes.
Okay, thank you.
And that also, by the way, goes for the other two driveways as well, correct?
Correct,
Yeah. Please, go ahead.
I just want to commend the staff and the neighbors and many on the council who really, I think, worked very hard to come up with a solution that may not be perfect, but is quite an improvement over what's there. And I really think it's a great example of when people come together and hear one another, you come up with solutions that work for everybody. So well done.
Anybody else? I'll just add, I think certainly appreciate the contribution from the neighbors and also the Websters and the other families that are most directly affected. I know that sidewalk wasn't something that you started off saying that you would particularly want, but you've been very accommodating and working with the staff to come to an acceptable resolution. I think clearly we have come up with something which can be beneficial for everybody. Trying to keep all the remedial work in keeping with the design and the desires of the residents who are affected. So I hope it's worked out well. I should mention for the public record, the estimated cost of this project is about $100,000. We had initially budgeted $40,000 for it. But on the other hand, we had about, how much, Dave, did we have budgeted for? 95 for Stamford, which we're not spending because we're not widening Stamford. So effectively, we have room within our budget easily to accommodate this. So it's good. Okay. I'd like to hear a motion, but it ought to include that there will be some further design changes to accommodate the sloping of the driveway that take it into the past the right of way of the town. So if there's Rich, do you want to make a motion in that regard?
I move that we approve the proposed sidewalk installation on Ridge Avenue pending the further design changes that Dave has made.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, approved. Dave, can you give us a feeling for the timeline of the work and when it can be undertaken?
I wish I could. We're currently doing concrete work, and I've told the contractor that we're planning to add this. They have some upcoming purple line work that they're hoping will not be done soon so they can stay mobilized in the town, but it's possible they'll have to pull the crew out and then bring them back in. And with this, there's also, coordination of the landscaping and the private improvements. So I just need to get our contractor with our landscape contractor to coordinate those and see when we can get it on the schedule. But I'm hoping to have it done as soon as possible.
Does that mean before Christmas?
Maybe.
That's your goal, to get it done.
I'd
this
like to
fall.
do it this fall.
Yeah,
It
okay.
just depends on,
I
there's a lot of
understand.
moving pieces. So, and I have
It'd be
until
great if that could be accomplished. That'd be super. Okay, thank you. All right, great. Moving on to public hearing on the resolution to change the no parking zone to a no stopping or standing zone at the 6700 block of West Avenue. This is on the east side of West Avenue, directly from Bradley toward Ridge. So I now, since Ron has been through this twice, I don't have to ask him to do it a third time. So let me first open it up to residents for any comments about this particular resolution. B, please.
Hi, my name's Dee Harris, and I'm a resident at 4428 Ridge Street. I don't have a lot of comments tonight. You've heard my comments before, and I appreciate the chance to make one more comment before you have your vote. first of all, thank you for your efforts at improving the safety at all of the southwest part of the town. You've been very busy with our part of the town recently, and we appreciate it. I want to underline again, relative to the changing of the parking regulations, that this is really a safety improvement. I know that my other neighbor, who's my rear door neighbor, David Wittenstein and Lee Wittenstein, are very much concerned about this as well. It creates a daily hazard for both of us. The change in parking will be key to safety of both the residents and the people coming and going to the school, because many times they put themselves in danger unwittingly. Given established habits, however, habits are hard to change, especially for people when they're parking or dropping kids off. Enforcement is an extremely important issue, and I want to emphasize that again, that the only thing in the past that has worked to change these kinds of behavior is presence of the police. And at first they have to be pretty active about ticketing, and then just their presence will start to enforce and people start to change their habits. I've seen that happen multiple times when there was police presence at that intersection and in that block. So I really hope that that's something that is included in your conversations and has been included. I would just note that we need police coverage for the entire period, not just for a portion of the period. We need the police coverage for the entire period from 8 to 9:30 in the morning for drop off and from 3 to 4:30 for pickup, because that is when the vast majority of the violations, the parking problems and the traffic problems with a lack of ability for two-way traffic, given just the physical layout of the street. So, and that's important for the enforcement to be there then. So the only other question I would like to just raise at this point, this is not directly relevant to the decision you're making tonight, but I would request that more information on the meeting that you had with the church and the school be shared with the residents. And yeah, and I guess that's the main thing. Just
We'll make sure, Gio, at that point, we'll make sure you have the copy of the minutes from the Public Services Committee, because that has a report of the meeting that we had with the church.
Is there a full report? Because I was at that
Yeah.
meeting, but I still didn't hear all
Rich,
the
gave a
information I would
briefing
like
on
to
what we
hear.
covered.
Yes, it's.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more of the more of the
It's in
detailed
minutes of
information.
the Public Service
Okay,
Committee.
that's great. Thank you very much. And I think that's pretty much it. But I appreciate your time. Appreciate all the
Thank you,
time you've been
Dee.
putting into this.
Great. Any other comments? Any comments from my colleagues? Okay, if not, is there a motion?
Just a
Oh, sure,
quick
please.
question about the enforcement question that was just brought up here. What, I understand the limitations with respect to every day, Monday through Friday, 8 to 9:30 and 3 to 4:30, but has there been any discussions around increasing enforcement initially, at least?
Todd, you
Todd, you
want,
want- yeah.
Todd, you want to talk to that?
Sure. Yeah, I've already asked our police officers to maintain a presence there as much as is possible. There are sometimes not two officers in town. There's just one officer, and they're at Chevy Chase Elementary School during dismissal and drop off and pickup as well as oneness. But there has been an increased police presence there, and we can continue to do that. We can't guarantee that there's going to be officers there every single day during pickup and drop off, only because there might not be sufficient number of officers on duty at any given time to split an officer between Oneness and Chevy Chase Elementary. But there has been increased enforcement, and there will continue to be.
All right, but we take the comment to heart. We know we have to do more there, so we'll look into that. We'll look into it, taking it seriously.
Without assurance, it's not going to.
One thing I have, the church, but we should mention this because it's coming to the meeting, that the church puts out, no one mentioned this, Rich, the church puts out cones, right?
Well,
during-
Yeah, they said they routinely, well, that's about the no parking, no standing.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, yeah.
Yeah, they've tried to help the situation by putting cones in that no parking area right now, so people wouldn't stop or stand there. But we need the authority with this resolution to allow an officer to actually enforce the no standing and no stopping.
Correct, right. Okay, is there a motion to support this? Rich, do you want to enter?
I move we approve the resolution to change the no parking zone on West Avenue to a no stopping standing zone.
I'll
All-
second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, done. Great. Then the third public hearing is on an emergency ordinance to extend the exemption from the ban of gasoline-powered blowers to town contractors through this fall, and to temporarily exempt the town from application of County Code Section 31B9, noise control, leaf removal equipment. Todd, do you want to explain this for the benefit of everybody, what we're talking about here? To go past the
Sure, I'd be happy to.
gobbledygook that I just read.
The town recently rebid its leaf collection contracts. The contract it had run its 5-year course, and we were required by our code to rebid the contract. We did so, and Hughes Landscaping, who currently does our leaf collection, was awarded the contract as the most responsible and responsive bidder. In conversations with the management of Hughes, both the owner and our primary point of contact, it was made clear to us that if we were to go to all battery power blowers, which they were very much willing to do and had the capability of doing, that in order to ensure that the batteries were charged continuously throughout the day, understanding that it's an 8 to 9 hour job every day for 2 months, that there would need to be a service truck following the leaf collection vehicles with a generator to charge the batteries as the leaf collection proceeded. Understanding that a generator causes a significant amount of noise and pollution, as much as gas-powered leaf blowers do, we didn't find it reasonable to think that it would be beneficial to ban the use of gas-powered leaf blowers and replace it with a generator to charge the batteries that was in tow to the leaf collection vehicles. And so for that reason, I approached the council to see how they wanted to consider this. This was at last month's meeting, and you have agreed to hold a hearing and consider extending our contractor was exempt from our gas power leaf blower ordinance last year in consideration of this issue, and the council had agreed to consider a further extension of their exemption for this leaf collection season. And that is why this ordinance is in front of you this evening. We also need to exempt ourselves from a portion of Chapter 31B9 of the County Code in order for us to not have that applicable in the town for this leaf collection season, so that the contractor isn't in violation of the County Code.
Okay, thank you.
And I can just add to that, Mayor Rush, the typical procedure for adopting an ordinance is to introduce at one meeting and have a hearing at a subsequent meeting. But given that leaf collection is going to start this month, we're proposing that this ordinance be adopted on an emergency basis. The charter does allow ordinances to be adopted at the same meeting they're introduced in the event of an emergency. And again, the emergency being that collection has to start this month. And the exemption that's proposed here, as Todd said, is just for one more season. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron, for that. Good. Okay. Are there any comments from the residents about this? No, I don't see it here. Okay. Among my colleagues?
Yeah. Can I make a motion? I move to approve the emergency ordinance to extend the exemption from the ban on gas-powered blowers for town contractors through 2025 and to temporarily exempt the town from application of County Code Section 31B-9, noise control / leaf collection, leaf removal equipment.
Second? Before we vote, I have one change to suggest in the resolution itself about the generator. We ought to make clear that it's gas-powered generator. So that people understand who are looking through this, that there'd be a truck following that
Yes,
running
thank you.
on gas or on diesel that is generating the electricity to the batteries that would then go into the battery-powered leaf blower. So with
I'll
that
make that
change,
change. Thank you.
thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. I'll also add, the first time that I had a chance to discuss this with Todd, I was up in Germantown taking a walk with my brand new granddaughter and in a stroller. And we happened to walk by one of these generators that was generating the power to charge the batteries, and it was making an extraordinary amount of noise. I couldn't hear Todd at all. So I do understand that this this issue is real. Okay. That concludes our public hearings, and now we're going to move to the council discussions. The first one is the Bradley Lane Safety Study. I'm going to turn it over to Rich as our liaison to the Public Services Committee to start off the discussion. But I just want to open by again saying thank you to all the residents who've been so active in this. We do feel that there's been an opening made here with the SHA, State Highway Administration, which is in frankly fairly distinct contrast to our usual situation with the SHA. Where we see some daylight, we want to take advantage and push forward. And also the fact that just as of this month, the town actually can launch its own speed camera program, which it never had been able to do before. Also provides us with an additional opportunity to do something here that we could not do before. So with that as a preamble, let me turn over to you, Rich, and want to make some comments.
Yeah, let me first reiterate the commendation to Ed and Grant and to Howard and the PSC. I think they've been very, very collegial, supportive of each other, and have come up with a set of recommendations which I think we can fully get behind. I do want to talk a little bit about schedule here because it's important. Tonight, we're going to discuss a draft that Todd and Barney and I put together as a synthesis of the PSC and residents discussions. And we need to turn that around among ourselves fairly quickly in a couple of days so that we can get it back out to the residents to take a look at what we're recommending, and then to have them do a quick turnaround so we can get it to the SHA as quickly as possible. And because we do want the momentum to continue and the pressure to continue to be put on SHA to get these activities completed. With that, I think you've got, is there anything else? Anybody want to ask a question about just the timing of all this? All right.
I think our goal should be to try to get something out to the SHA by the end of next week.
Yes, I would.
So we can turn everything around.
I agree. When Barney and Todd and I looked at the PSC and the residents' recommendations, we decided to formulate it a little differently because we didn't, a lot of these issues that have been recommended are all priority issues for us. However, there are some that need to be done immediately and can be done immediately. And we need to put those on the front burner. There's only a couple of issues that were different between the PSC recommendations and the residents' recommendations. Those would all fall into kind of a midterm discussion because it's things like the T intersection at Maple rather than the bump out, which we need to think about a little bit more, but that can be done because that's a construction project and the SHA or the town wouldn't be doing that immediately anyhow. So we've segmented it into things that can be implemented immediately, things that are kind of midterm options and longer term options. And then lastly, what I'll call an institutional option. And we purposely took the turnover of Bradley Lane to the town from the State Highway Administration to the town as an institutional issue. It's not really a safety issue. It's an institutional issue. And that's going to take quite a while to consider. But we didn't want it to fall off the table, so we left it as an issue that needs to be talked about in the future. So with that, do you all have the recommendations? Do you want me to go through them, or do you want to comment on them?
You might just quickly hit the headlines of the, especially in dividing between where we see the SHA taking the lead and where the town would.
Yeah, and I should have mentioned that. In each of those categories that I talked about, we separated it into the actions that need to be taken by SHA versus actions that the town can take or needs to take in conjunction with SHA. So for immediate implementation, we had things that the SHA needs to take a lead on, which include installation of the speed cushions, the lane narrowing and buffer creation, and the improved signage to prohibit trucks over 5 tons on the road. So those were the things for SHA in the immediate term. For us in the town, it's kind of still a joint issue between the Montgomery County Police Department and the town. We want to install cameras along Bradley, and so we're going to pursue the town's authority to implement speed cameras. But at the same time, we want to continue to press the State Highway Administration to put the other cameras on the Montgomery Police Department. I'm sorry. And so that's the one of the things for the town. In the eastbound, the other thing for the town is the vegetation and sightline management. Both the PSC and the SHA recommended that we do some trimming of some of the shrubbery there to improve lines of sight. That's something we can do ourselves, and we'll pursue those actions as the town. So those were the immediate implementation activities. We had some midterm options. And again, the state highway lead is the Maple Avenue intersection redesign. As I said, there's PSC wanted a T intersection that residents were in favor of a bump out. It needs to be looked at more carefully. And so we'll work to consider both of those options and have them evaluated. The raised or scored center lines and enhanced flex posts. There was, while people initially thought the idea was a good idea, some of the residents said, wait a minute, we put those things in the middle of the street. What's going to happen is that any car that wants to swerve a little bit into the left side will hit those and then swerve to the right and endanger us more on the sidewalks. So we ought to take another look at that, those raised and scored center lines. And so those are all State Highway Administration activities. Longer term options, again, State Highway is the shift of Bradley Lane to the south. As you know, they've expressed concern about moving the highway or the Bradley Lane to the south because of the infringement on the infrastructure that's already there and the cost of doing that. So we still need to pursue some of that with them to see what the options are with SHA. The other thing on longer term town lead, the town's lead is the sidewalk widening on the north side. As Todd mentioned, we're doing a lot line survey now to determine where the properties, the property owners' lots end and where the town's right of way begins. And after we get that, we'll have some better information to see whether it's even feasible or not of moving the sidewalk onto the north side. And then I mentioned the last thing, the institutional change, which is the town working with SHA to see whether or not it's reasonable or prudent for us to assume the control of Bradley Lane. So that kind of wraps up our summary. I'm done.
Thank you.
You want any discussion?
Thank you for putting this together. That I had an opportunity to read through the reports that were put together by the residents as well as the PSC, and everything was in this summary report is also very helpful. I had a couple of questions though, and considering so many residents from Bradley are here. The first one is about the vegetation sightlines. Historically, in the past, when topics like this come up, which is, you know, the sidewalk, there needs to be some hedges that are kind of put back onto the property line, and there's been some pushback. I'm not saying it's only Bradley Lane residents, this happens across the town, and I'm not. Okay.
I don't have access to the volume. If you turn the mic closer.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay. Okay, happy to do that. So what I'm referring to is in the past, when we've talked about sightlines, when it comes to vegetation, there's been pushback from residents that it will destroy the vegetation that's planted in their yards. They're seeking it for not only privacy purposes, but also just aesthetics. So I see that one of the recommendations put in by the kind of a concerted, or not so much concerted, but an agreement is to take a look at this vegetative sightlines and pare them back. Have you all as neighbors have had discussions about this, and maybe it came up in the PSC meeting, so that there can be some alignment with the neighbors that are on Bradley Lane to agree to that? So when the town comes and asks about certain vegetation that needs to be pulled back in order to create better sight lines, that we're not getting as much pushback as we have had in the past.
On the sidewalk side or on the side, if you go down Bradley, the side closer to the club, like the vegetation there is like out of control.
I'm talking the sidewalk side. The side, which is, you know, because we're talking about the comfort level as well of people walking their dogs and their children and going to and from Bethesda. So I'm talking the sidewalk side. There has historically been pushback. So I was just wondering if that came up in the PSC meeting. I wondered if it came up when the Bradley Lane residents were discussing this, you know, very important safety issue, whether that's something that there's agreement along, because it's just written in here as one of the possibilities. So just wondering.
So it wasn't on the agenda for the Crown discussing the SHA's report.
Understand. So, but maybe as these conversations continue, maybe that's something that can be discussed further.
A couple of things I think in the PSC discussion. One of them was safety.
Right into the mic. I think we're learning how we have to speak. Right into the mic.
Yeah.
Close it.
Yeah, I'd be swallowing it.
Yeah. They were very sensitive about the town's what I'll call right to trim vegetation for safety purposes. And so that was, you know, it wasn't described. There wasn't continued discussion about whether or not we would get the residents' input of whether to trim the vegetation or not. But we certainly should, because some of those residents have
yeah.
And part of this is that we need to see where the town's right of way is too, because a lot of times the shrubbery may have been planted in the town right of way.
Yes.
And we need to know that as well. So that's one of the reasons for the survey, is to get those boundaries crisper.
You are incorrect. You are incorrect in your interpretation of the residents' report and voices. This is Dr. Demetrius Albanus. Please reread our statements verbatim. We expressed firm support for safety on Bradley. and no further widening further north or further south. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Okay, excuse me. This is a discussion just among council members. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry, but it was a
I just
blatant.
want to make that
violation.
clear.
It was a
We
blatant-
heard you. I just want to make that clear. Thank you. Go ahead, Rich.
Carlo had a comment.
I was, same topic, and wondering if we can ask our traffic engineer what are best practices or guidelines having to do with sight lines at intersections like this. I personally, I avoid going to Bradley because making a turn out of any of those streets, I find dangerous because I can't see.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of good examples where the landscaping is low, you got a clear line of sight, and other places where you have to be halfway into the roadway before you can see if a car is coming. So there's got to be some engineering guidelines or best practices that.
I'll speak to that. Dave, you want to speak to it? What typically happens is we'll get a complaint from a resident that says, hey, I can't see past this, or it's cringing on the sidewalk. And what we do is staff goes out and looks at it to see whether or not there is a line of sight. And if it happens to be a roadway, and many times he'll bring the traffic engineer to make sure that we do get an appropriate, safe line of sight.
Yeah, we've done sort of comprehensive sightline evaluations on Bradley before. It's probably time to revisit those. Growth comes back, and if we're not constantly on it, it starts to become impinged. It's a little tricky just because there's the speed limit, which usually dictates, how far down the road you need to be able to see, but obviously the travel speeds are much higher than that. So you need to have additional clearance, but we can certainly have the engineer take a look at it.
Yeah.
Well, so part of this, I called Rich from the PSC meeting, they were specifically thinking about St. John's and Oneness School, right? That there was cut back in the vegetation
There was a
there.
couple of issues with St. John's. One is the shrubbery. Some of their shrubbery is growing over and onto Bradley itself, into the sidewalk there. And then the sight line is another issue from the turn. So that was one of the concerns, yes.
I had other,
Sure, please.
so the immediate implementation, I'm perfect agreement with, but in going into the medium term, I wasn't understanding the, I'm going to the raised or scored center line enhanced flex posts. I didn't understand the center line enhancement.
You may have to help me on this, Dave. There's a couple of ways that they can do with the center. You're probably familiar with a center line, and then they put notches in the center line
Yes.
so that if you're going over the center line, you'll hear a thump, 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 thump.
Right.
That's an enhanced center line.
To prevent people from crossing to try and pass.
No, I think the SHA's feeling was that if they're going to narrow these to 10 feet wide streets,
Oh, okay.
they're more concerned about vehicular accidents occurring
Because it's such a
rather
narrow.
than the so
Okay.
we're more concerned about our pedestrian safety. So when as it was discussed in the PSC and in the and I think during the residents too, one of the concerns was, well, if you do that, somebody's going to hear that and they're going to swerve to the right.
Yeah, and
go
that's
up onto the sidewalk rather than going in. And so if you leave just a center line there, it allows for some movement of a car into the other lane without having to impinge upon the sidewalk.
Oh, well, this is why I was wondering if the whatever's done as the treatment for the center line, can it also be done at the sidewalk at the curb? Obviously before the curb, but something as there's a thought about what to do with that extra foot or so before then to prevent, because if there is going to be a car that's going westbound, they feel it that they're in the center lane a little bit, try and overcompensate. They're also going to feel it on the other end. So I didn't know if that was something that was either discussed or a possibility or even a best practice.
I think we should discuss it with the State Highway Administration when we talk about that
Okay.
that buffer and what can be done. I think in our initial, if I remember correctly, you may have to correct me, Barney. One of their concerns was not a concern. They just felt that those the flexible pillars give pedestrians a false sense of security. And hence they're not as vigilant in walking down the street as they should be, because they think that's going to protect them somehow. And as you know, those things are flexible and they just will, it's not going to keep a car from doing anything. But so it needs to be discussed with them and what can be done in that buffer.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Let me make a comment about that. Actually, interesting. We did note in the memo that part of the near term, where we want to have the lane narrowing, we're all on board that. And I think the state's view is to do what we've done on what they did initially in East-West Highway, which was just to put in a white line. And interestingly enough, actually, that did a lot. Cars actually left those 2 feet pretty much, unused, which gave that extra safety margin to the sidewalk. But obviously, it's just a line in the road. And I take it residents have raised, well, let's not give up on the thought that they could actually move the curb and create a grass buffer or something, or widen the sidewalk so that's much more, physically dominant. But your thought could be, if the state resists that, what you're suggesting applying is at least something better than just a line, but at least is a clear signal to the driver that you're now infringing into the area that should be left clear for the safety of people walking. So that's something else to add to that
And
discussion.
truthfully, with East-West Highway, it was the line coupled with the speed camera that really created a nice little effect.
And I want to speak to that about the urgency for some. I have a very strong feeling that if we implement the speed humps or these speed cushions and the speed cameras, we'll see a significant slowdown of traffic on that street. It doesn't take care of the fact that there's still not enough room for somebody to make a mistake while driving. So that 2-foot buffer is really an important buffer for us to get on that road.
So it's my understanding that I think I read something where when there's a new speed camera, you need like 15 days of warning. You can't issue tickets, and then from the 16th day you can start issuing citation. So I'm thinking about that one, saying, what do you all think is the appropriate time for assessing? So you put in the SHA puts in the speed cushions, narrows the lanes. Like, what's the assessment timeline for saying, okay, now's a good time to study whether this is effective or not? Is it within 30 days of implementation? Like, what does that look like so that we can be responsive to the Bradley Lane residents to say, number one, it can't all happen overnight, but number two, you shouldn't be waiting years either. So what's that timeline looking like?
I haven't, the PSC, I don't think has talked about a timeline yet for any of that, but we would have to have some evaluation of the effectiveness of these measures or why are we doing them? So we do need to have that. And so we'll think about that.
Any other comments? I'll make a couple of points I'd like to make. First of all, we want people to look at this more carefully, get back. Today is Wednesday. If you can get back to us by, yes, exactly, us, by tomorrow evening or Friday morning, so we can turn around a revised version and get it out to the residents no later than over the weekend is what we'd like to do. And then give them some days to look at it and then get back to us.
With the goal of having 2 SHA by the end of next week.
And next week, that's right. I think the spirit should be that whatever this statement is, would be an attachment basically to a cover letter, which we'll be drafting in the meantime. And I think the cover letter will be making clear the priority actions we're asking the SHA specifically for. the speed cushions, the lane narrowing, the improved signage, and also looking for them to commit to this and to give us a timeline. So we really get them focused on exactly what we want them to be making sure is upfront. But they would see this whole document that sits behind this. And the reason for the need to think through both what we want SHA to do, but also what we want the town to do, is because obviously they work in tandem to the point that was just covered. And we're going to be taking this up in our next discussion item regarding speed cameras. The SHA is really not involved as a principal party other than in a reflexive way that they have to give approval, but they are not going to be themselves pushing for the cameras. They will simply receive a request and presumably approve it. But whether the cameras show up or not is a function of what the town pushes for. And in the case of the side of the street on where the residents live, we could have our own program or the county could do it. We're going to discuss that in a moment. On the south side of the street, on where the country club is, that's up to the county. We cannot control that. We cannot put a camera there. So the point we want to make sure is that we're always thinking holistically about what are the things we're asking the SHA to push for, what are the things we are in control of, and how do we push forward all that in a coordinated way. So that's why this document covers both of that. And I think to a point that was made by Rich and also by you, ma'am, which is interesting to us, and it's reflected in this last comment, which is it's good to see how these things stack up over time. And one reason why the consideration, for example, of the lateral shift at Maple is something that I am just speaking personally as one council member, I'm comfortable taking up in the medium term, is that I think it would be good to see first how well the combination of the speed cushions, the narrowing of the streets, and speed cameras work before we push yet something else that has to be done. And I do think we have to also recognize that there is a trade-off here. They're not all, they have an effect on each other. And so, you know, we're all used to the fact that Connecticut has 10-foot wide speed lanes, 10-foot wide lanes. But those are 3 lanes in each direction. That's not one lane, you know, one lane in each direction. So I think there is a more problematic consideration, which I think we should anticipate the state is going to think carefully about in narrowing the lanes to 10 feet wide when you only have one lane in each direction. And they're going to think very hard about what is going to be safe for vehicles, just as you said, Rich, and whether they think if that happens, if that is to say, if they approve and agree to narrow the lanes as we would wish, will that change their view about some of the other measures? So for example, they might, I would anticipate, potentially be a little more concerned about a lateral shift just because there's less room for the cars, and they're going to be more nervous about cars not being able to follow those lanes and shifting as easily if they've been narrowed. So I just want us to be recognizing that these things do have an interplay. And that's part of why I think there's value in going, you know, some things we all want and care about and we think will make a really material difference, but other things that could follow on as they could prove necessary to take in a somewhat staged way. And then the other comment I wanted to make is about the sidewalk idea. Again, I'm just speaking as one council member, but I think we've heard from the SHA that they are not inclined to support the idea of pushing Bradley to the south. That is to say, to take over some of what we know is a very ample right of way on the south side of the street. There are all those utility poles, all those wires, all that expense. And again, we should all be aware of the very large deficit in Maryland's budget and projects like this and what could happen. So while we will push, that's certainly something we're saying very clearly in this proposal, that we really do want to see that happen. I think we also want to be thinking about, well, what happens if they refuse? And yet we still want to see a safer sidewalk. I think we've heard from residents that there's great concern, and we understand it, that in widening a sidewalk by some specific amount all the way along Bradley, you could obviously find places where you hit retaining walls, a lot of vegetation, people planted, they're very concerned about that. But I guess what I would ask residents to think about. And it may be something that's almost done on a block by block basis. You know, it's not even, doesn't have to be all Bradley, but to be aware that let's not let the best be the enemy of the good. So for example, if it turns out that, and this is all hypothetical because we don't know the answer, but supposing that we find out that there is an extra 15 inches of space that's inside the town right of way, well, maybe there's some places where all 15 inches could be used to extend the sidewalk. Maybe there's another place where there's a very substantial retaining wall, which is 10 inches. So widen it by 10 inches, right? In other words, you don't necessarily have to feel like you do it in a straight line all the way through, but you take advantage and do what you can that makes sense. To some extent, that's pretty much the principle that we ultimately applied at Ridge Street in the extension of the sidewalk there, where there's a canopy tree. We narrowed the sidewalk from 4 to 3 feet. Okay, still better than not having a sidewalk. So I think as we work through this, town residents together, having an openness to consider ways that we could potentially widen the sidewalk that are practical and help alleviate the concern of safety and comfort, but not necessarily rigid in having to have a specified width, rammed all the way through. So I think for a future conversation, that would be an outline of an approach that at least I would appreciate people being able to take on board. Okay, there'll be plenty of time to discuss further down.
Just recently, and I know probably not in the town as much, but a lot more the delivery drivers and electric bikes are using the sidewalk on Bradley.
Okay, so all the more to the point that it's an issue. Okay, all right. Good. Anything else on this for now? Great. All right. Thank you. And thank you again for all the work that's gone into this. That made putting this together a lot easier, the fact that we had the good work that was done by the committee and by the residents to work from. With that, let's move on to discussion of the speed cameras. Todd, do you want to lead us in reviewing what we're looking at tonight and the options that we're considering?
Sure. Ron, you can jump in whenever you want. As the council knows, for the edification of residents, in the most recent General Assembly session, the state changed the law regarding circumstances under which municipalities can utilize speed monitoring systems, speed cameras, to effectively reduce speeds on highways that are within their corporate boundaries. The primary change was to not require a fully accredited police department to have to review the citations in order to allow them to be issued. Now it just requires an individual who's been trained in the municipality or on behalf of the municipality to review and approve those citations. That effectively allowed the town to consider standing up its own program, its own speed camera program. We have been, as I indicated in my manager's report at the beginning of the meeting, we have been trying to work with the Montgomery County Police Department to deploy a speed camera to monitor westbound speeds on the north side of Bradley to monitor westbound speeds. But they've indicated, as I said before, that they're going through a transition of vendors, that they're doing their own feasibility study and data collection effort, and they're waiting for the final SHA report to be issued to determine whether a speed camera at that location will be compatible with other improvements the SHA may undertake. In anticipation, and as Mayor Rush indicated, we'll continue to work with MCPD to determine whether or not they're willing and able and in relatively quick order to deploy a speed camera on the north side of Bradley. But absent that interest, or ultimately a decision not to do so, would allow the town to do that. And I have been researching options of vendors and contract terms in the interim period, and in order to be able to stand up a program in relatively short order, depending upon what the county's decision ultimately is. This ordinance that's in front of the council tonight for introduction will ultimately be subject to a public hearing at the November 19th meeting. It effectively simply authorizes the town to make use of speed monitoring systems. It's really based on state law, the authority derived from state law, and it simply states that we are exercising our authority under state law to be able to manage and implement speed camera systems. There is an accompanying resolution that has been provided to the council as well, and the resolution effectively limits the deployment scope of speed cameras initially, at least, to Bradley Lane because of the speed concerns expressed by residents and documented by multiple speed and volume studies. The idea here is that we want to limit the deployment of these systems to Bradley initially, and potentially other locations later, but that would be subject to resident involvement and consultation and engagement. So that effectively is the summary of what you are discussing this evening.
Thank you. Rich, is there anything you'd like to add to this?
As Todd said, this really, what we're talking about tonight are two things. One's the authority part, which we derive from the state, and we wanted to get that authority in place in the code. The issue of deployment, again, that's the resolution part. So after we've authorized it, the town still has to go through a set of requirements to actually put it in a particular place. And so the authority gives it, the first ordinance, the ordinance gives us the authority. The resolution starts the process by which we'll be able to do the analysis and so forth to provide to justify our putting it on Bradley Lane. That's it.
Yeah, I think, as I understand the timeline we're looking at, and there's one reason why we talked about it introducing this resolution, the ordinance tonight, is that if we introduce it tonight, we vote in November, then it's 30 days to become effective. If Todd, in the meantime, has negotiated a contract with the vendor, that contract can't become final, and we can't expect the vendor to begin undertaking the ordering of the equipment until 30 days after the ordinance has been approved. So initially, in fact, Todd was thinking of normal rational world, we would have a discussion tonight and introduce next month and blah, blah. And Rich and I said, no, let's see if we can speed this up. So that's why we're talking about introducing it tonight, which would mean that effectively, if we were then to approve it in November, then in third week of December, Todd, potentially a contract could be signed with a vendor that would be binding and complete, and give the confidence to the vendor to then to go off and order all the equipment. In which case, probably best case is, I guess, that the cameras could be in operation by April or something in that time frame. And obviously it could slip, but this at least permits us to march down that road. And I think the other thing to mention here is that one reason why, in this my own personal view, I am so eager for us to push this forward is that we really don't know, how long it'll take the State Highway Administration to get anything done, even if they agree. All right. I mean, but we don't know what their schedule is. They could tell us that they plan to repave Bradley anyway, in who knows, 2027, and they're going to wait till then to put in the speed, and we just don't know. So it just seems to us, having been, interacted for so many years with so many jurisdictions, that if we have something in our own control where we can set the timeline that we know can really make a difference, let's get it done. And I believe you said, Todd, that the program, we'd have to enter into a contract for 3 years or something in that time frame. Is that right, with a vendor?
3 years, exactly. The base 3 years, and then 2 option years, or more than.
Fair enough. But the point is that 3 years we could decide, that's not forever. If it turns out there's a different vendor or a different program or something else we want to do, we'll change it. No big deal. But in the meantime, we'll have cameras, which we all know we want. So it just seems to me that this is, pushing this forward now and looking hard at it is something that I feel very worthwhile for the council to do. And it doesn't mean that we will not further engage with the police department. We will, but my sense is that they will want to wait and see the final report from SHA. Then they'll further deliberate, and who knows how long they'll take. And knowing how rapidly Todd can do things, his system will be up and operating a lot faster than the police department will have made up their minds. That's my own personal thought.
Can I have a
Sure.
moment?
Of course.
I endorse your optimism, number one. But I do want to make sure that we understand that there is a time frame here between the time that we pass the ordinance and do the authorization, that Todd has to we have to get a person trained.
Yeah.
We've got to get the approval of SHA to
You're right
deploy
about that.
it.
You're
So
correct.
let's, I just caution us to keep, I endorse your enthusiasm.
And I endorse your caution. But we have to keep pushing. Yeah, okay. Any other questions? Do we need a resolution to introduce the ordinance?
A motion to introduce, yes. And then there'll be
There-
a public hearing at your subsequent meeting.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to introduce?
Motion to introduce an ordinance to authorize the use of speed monitoring systems in the town.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Moving on to our next discussion item, SRA 2502, County Workforce Housing. Irene, do you want to lead us on this?
Sure. So I'm losing track of time here. The county council earlier this summer passed a legislation that would allow for the building of multifamily housing along Connecticut lots that are abutting Connecticut Avenue and East-West Highway. These are not just our lots, it's throughout the county. They're so-called growth corridors that have been designated. And as of November 1st, you'll be able, one of those lots, any of those lots could be converted to multifamily housing development. The outstanding issue, because it was a zoning text amendment that was passed at the time, was how many lots could be combined to allow for developer to create even bigger developments. And that's where this SRA, or subdivision regulation amendment, a partnering legislation to the ZTA was needed. This SRA, as it was originally proposed, was to allow for the consolidation of up to 3 lots of those eligible lots. And it also had some cleanup work with respect to the treatment of so-called flag lots and through lots, because not everything is standard throughout the county. Sometimes you have a skinny little driveway and then it leads to a lot behind some other lot, and that's called a flag lot. And so they needed to clean that up a little bit, as well as the treatment of eligible lots and ineligible lots that they couldn't be combined. For purposes of tonight's discussion, no, what we focused on was the actual the lot consolidation limit. We have within the down county area in the Chevy Chases, along the lots that are along Connecticut Avenue are quite large versus, say, East-West Highway that are much smaller. And the concern was some of these lots are up to 20,000 square feet, that if you allowed for the consolidation, you could end up with a 60,000 square foot development that could then be converted to multifamily housing. So for purposes of introducing some expectation and what it was scale in scale to the single family homes that are in the lots behind these future multifamily developments, we tried to work with the other Chevy Chase municipalities to determine what's an appropriate thing to do given the various lot sizes that exist. So what was proposed, we got the various municipalities together, and what was proposed was essentially the minimum, we're all considered to be R60. R60 stands for, generally speaking, the size of the lots are 6,000 square foot or more. There's also R90, so those are 9,000 square foot lots. There's R200 or 20,000 square foot lots. And there's R40, but in our areas, it's R60. So we thought, great, let's propose to the county council that it's 6,000 times 3 or 18,000. That's your limit, 18,000 square feet. And that was one of the 3 options that were put forth to the County Council Parks Housing, Planning, thank you, Parks Housing and PHP Committee. And ultimately where they landed was there are a whole lot of charts. Effectively, the lots that are a part of this ZTA, so there's not all lots are, if you live in the interior of the town, your lot isn't impacted, right? So the lots that are along these growth corridors are approximately 7,500 square feet versus the county lots, they're a little bit lower to 7,000 square feet. That's median versus average. So the proposal that was passed by the PHP and is ultimately going to go to the county council is the 7,500 times 3. So 7,500 is 22,000. 23,000, sorry, my math is bad. 23,000 square feet. So while we were hoping for 18,000 square feet, it's just a little bit more, 23. And when we look at the lots that are along Connecticut Avenue, it opens up a couple of more possibilities for lot consolidation, but not that much. Maybe one extra segment that would be out there. Keep in mind, in this day and age, it is extremely difficult to assemble lots in our neighborhood. So, but it is possible, you know, if you waited long enough, if a developer was keen enough, certainly it could happen legally. But practically, it may not be possible to actually combine those 3 lots. So rather than looking at it as 3 lots, it's instead the limit is square footage. So you could combine, if the 2 lots that you got are 2 big lots and they're 23,000 and change, then you could combine those. If it's 24,000, you can't combine those 2 lots. So that's a way to kind of look at it. We met as a municipal group again to discuss whether it was acceptable, if we wanted to go further and kind of advocate for the 18,000 square foot limit, taking into account the political dynamics that are occurring. And as a group decided that this was about as good as we're going to get in terms of the deal. Certainly a lot better than combining 3 20,000 square foot lots, which is certainly in existence today. So better than what the alternative could have been. It's expected that the county council will vote on this SRA next Tuesday, the 14th of October, taking in effect 20 days later. So the November 1st will be the ZTA, you can build multifamily housing, and then if it passes November 4th, the SRAs, you can only consolidate up to 23,000 change in our R60 areas. So that's the summary there. I believe that's it for housing.
Probably is.
I believe that's especially with an election year coming up. So I think we can breathe a sigh of relief for the moment.
Any other comments from my colleagues? Thank you. Thank you very much for all your hard work on this, Irene, both on the ZTA as well as the SRA. And it was absolutely vital, once again, that we were working with other communities and not just the town of Chevy Chase. The fact that 7, 8 communities came together with a common position, which is not easy to obtain, but we did it. Irene led it. to make the case, I think really went a long way to securing what I think is a really still a very good result. As Andrew Friedson, who's chair of this committee, had pointed out, there were those who did not want any limits on consolidation. So you could potentially have had an extremely long stretch of lots put together. He had proposed a consolidation limited to 3, but as Irene properly mentioned, that could mean 3 20,000 square foot lots, 60,000 square feet. And our whole point was we accept, many of us are in favor of allowing multifamily housing, but it needs to be in scale. And by limiting it to effectively in the 20, 22,000, a little bit above the 18, yes, a developer will still largely have to comply with the sense of scale of our community when even if they're able to obtain 2 lots together, which as you point out would be difficult. So it may not be perfect, but I think we've obtained a result which is a lot better than what otherwise would have happened. Okay, then the state legislation tracking. Very quickly on this, there's a proposal this group of communities had worked with an outside lawyer, Michelle Rosenfeld, who is quite helpful to us in monitoring state activity and county activity. And there's a proposal to continue her work. But also Ron has stepped forward and also said there's a great deal of this that he can do. So the real question is in our mind is whether we really still need to use Michelle on a retainer standalone basis, or do we go with the good help of Ron and what he's outlined to us? So is there any comments or views about that from my colleagues? Yes, yes, yeah. Ron, do you want to say anything about what you're prepared to do for us?
Sure. So in the past, I've emailed my clients about the legislation that's come to light that impacts municipal operations, and at the end of the legislative session, provided an update of what new laws have been adopted and what we need to do to comply with those new laws. In the past, we haven't had that many controversial laws, but now that we're seeing a lot of housing laws being adopted by the state, there is an interest to more proactively track that legislation. And so I'm proposing to continue to do what I've done in the past, which I've done without charge, but also to leverage AI applications in order to have real-time updates as bills are dropped, and then continue to provide the updates, but have more timely notice with that AI software. And also, continue to get updates from the Maryland Municipal League. In the past, the town has had a member of the council on the legislative committee. And so that's been another great opportunity to stay abreast of new bills as they're introduced. We don't have a member this year, unfortunately. Gaithersburg has 2, which I don't think is fair, but we won't get into that. But that they're committed to keep us posted. And yeah, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Out of curiosity, is Michael Silliman also pursuing a legal degree of any sort?
Not that I'm aware of. So Michael Silliman's the manager at Martin's Additions, and he and I came up with this idea together on how we might more proactively track things. And he's going to stay engaged with the Leadership Montgomery Group and try and get on the MML Legislative Committee next year. But that's not guaranteed, as everybody knows. There's a limited number of seats available there. But I have reached out to the attorney and director of the Legislative Committee and asked if I could be a silent observer periodically. And she asked, how many clients do I represent? And I gave her my list of 11, and I'm waiting to hear back from her. But, given the number of MML members that I represent, I anticipate a favorable response there.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. The other question or potential thing I would suggest to add, There's obviously a lot of a lot of trial ballooning of messaging that the various between Secretary Day, the State Secretary of Housing, and the Governor Moore does before introducing any legislation. And I wonder if putting out Google alerts on anything having to do with housing and with the name might also be helpful to get a sense of what they're talking about, what's being reported in this particular space before it gets to the point that there's actual legislation that's been introduced. And then the other option here is it was very unclear last year when the second round of housing legislation was introduced, just how much engagement was done with Montgomery County, whether through MNC PPC or directly through to the planning department or the county council. When I asked such questions, there were different answers to the same question as to whether or not people were contacted in advance. So I'm not sure between you or I don't know exactly how engaged Michael is with folks at the planning department or county council level, or MNC PPC, but if that's also an option to kind of get a sense on the back end as to who they're meeting with, as that should be public information as well. But those were my only thoughts. Otherwise, I think this is a really good idea.
Good, thank you. Is there a sense that we should just continue this way and not engage with Michelle at this time? Obviously, if something does specifically come up that requires our consolidated effort with other towns, we can then engage her. So it's not like we can't use her, but I think this is okay, good. All right, Ron, you're hired. Before we end the evening, there are a few other topics that I want to touch on quickly that are very pertinent to our town. One is the potential redevelopment of the One Life Fitness Club area over on Montgomery. Second, I want to touch on the new boundary study that's just been released for the assignment of school districts in the Montgomery County. Thirdly, I want to talk a little bit more about the PEPCA meeting that Rich, Todd, and I are going to have tomorrow. And then finally, as Irene and Amber and I and Todd were all on an update on the Purple Line. So if we can just spend a few minutes on each of those four topics, I'd be grateful. Carla, do you want to start off in discussing the redevelopment of the Sport and Health?
Sure. The Sport and Health, or as it's known now, One Life Fitness, just on the other side of the Capitol Crescent Trail in the 4500 block, 4400 block of Montgomery Avenue. I attended last night a presentation that sort of spills out of the Bethesda Downtown Design Advisory Panel. Tambra was also there. Most of the attendees there, I would say, were residents on Elm Street whose property would be opposite this proposed development. There wasn't a lot of detailed information that was shared. There's renderings, and the entire development team and consultants and so forth were there to address questions. So I would say there wasn't a lot of formal presentation, but for those who are interested, and I hope we can make this available through links to our website, the Downtown Design Advisory Panel materials are available online. And what I saw before this meeting was only the last presentation, which was pretty abbreviated, but their initial submission in July had a lot more details about size and heights and those sorts of things, and more technical drawings there. Just to summarize it very quickly, total development of about 700,000 square feet, of which about 625,000 of that is residential in 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom units. What's called commercial space is primarily fitness. About 76,000 square feet of fitness space and another couple thousand of other retail space. It's a 3-building set, and the 2 of the 3 buildings are part of what's called a Lifetime Living outfit. They have fitness centers in Potomac and Bethesda, and in a few places in the country, they combine their residential with fitness. The third building is a smaller building and it's just residential. Without showing drawings, it's very hard to describe, but I'll do my best to basically describe it as the two bigger buildings. There's a podium of about 35 feet in height, and then from that point, it moves back towards Montgomery Avenue at a 45-degree angle. So there's a series of terraces that step back and step back, sort of providing something more appealing than, you know, sort of a tall vertical wall facing the town. What I would say about the town concerns that have been expressed, of course, the usual, when construction is going on, there's noise, there's dust, there's vibration, all those sorts of things that, you know, many people live through with the Purple Line. So of course that is something we'll be monitoring, but probably privacy and potential visibility into our homes from across the tracks and the Capitol Crescent Trail was top of mind, I would say, for the folks that attended. And this is very early in the process. This is what's called the preliminary and sketch plan submission. So a very limited amount of information. They will be moving forward to develop a detailed site plan that will, of course, go through the normal process. In terms of schedule, don't expect anything to start happening physically for the next couple of years. So it's going to take a couple of years or more to get through site plan approval and then pulling the permits, and then probably 2.5 to 3 years of construction after that. So I know just in a couple minutes time, that's sort of the overview. Again, there are a couple of links that we can, I think, make available to folks who want to get into it in more detail.
Yeah, we will be sending around a town crier posting, providing a link for people to look at whatever designs we're able to show. And Todd's trying to get the latest and hopefully more complete, but otherwise we'll go with what the DAP had. Tambra, did you want to add anything? Because you also attended the meeting last night.
Sure. I was just going to add that some people might find it confusing to refer to it as the One Life redevelopment because it encompasses 3 acres and there are 2 other buildings along that stretch of, I guess, Montgomery up to including the other side of Pearl. Anyway, just the sort of, again, it's hard to describe without a picture, but one building is 5 stories. The middle building is planned to be 14 stories in part and 12, it's sort of a graduated roof, but 14 and 12 stories high. And the third building is 12 stories high. And the total number of apartments is approximately 590. And there's parking that is planned to be underground. And I think the architect said that there would be, let's see, close to 582 parking spaces. So close to 1 for 1. And I think they also were talking about that there's a gap, there's access to the Capitol Crescent Trail on Pearl Street, and also there's another gap that's 50 to 60 feet wide between the second and third building. And they're anticipating sort of making that part of the Capitol Crescent Trail something like the High Line in New York with landscaping and benches.
Do we still have Rod Hendrick on the DAP?
No, he's not. No,
Okay.
he's left. Yeah, he was really good. He is very good, and it was great when he was on that committee, but he's not any longer. Well, a lot more to be worked on, but I think initially, at least it's good there are these extensive step backs. I think that makes a very big difference in its own right. And we'll be monitoring it all very closely and listening to what residents have to say. Very quickly on the boundary study, as was the initial boundary study that came out had 4 different options. One option actually had the high school students in the town going to Montgomery Blair. And the other 3 options, while the high school students still went to BCC, made a rather major change in the middle school designation. It would go way, at Silver Creek, it would go to Westwood, all right? And the town at the time, we sent in a strong letter saying we were very concerned about all this. The whole intention had been, and then the school board has honored this, that almost to the date, that by September, they would come back with revised versions of their plans. They've now done that. They just released them yesterday or 2 days ago. And in looking at it, it's apparent that in fact, there's no change whatsoever to the school districts for the kids in town of Chevy Chase on any of the 4 options that are now the new 4 options to be considered. There's just no change. So that's good news. I think with your permission, I might send a letter back just saying, acknowledging that, saying we appreciate this. And obviously, if there's no change for our residents, I don't think we necessarily are going to weigh in on which of the 4 plans is the better one. That's up to other communities that are affected to actually, I think, weigh in. But we just want to register our support for these 4 options. And it's probably useful for us to do that in part because they have not actually taken off the table the initial 4. They've added 4, but they haven't eliminated the first 4. So trying to encourage the point that they should be only focused on these 4 and they should forget about the first 4 is probably something that we should emphasize. So with your permission, I'll get a letter out on that point. But anyway, that's all very good news. I'd like to think that our effort, in part, of course, with so many other communities, but paid off. Thirdly, the PEPCO meeting, which Todd mentioned in his initial report, this has been very, very frustrating. We had a very serious storm here this past summer. Overnight, about, I would reckon, 1/4 to 1/3 of the town lost power. Almost everybody was reconnected within 1 day, which is not a big surprise, and no one would have commented on that. But there were 35 families based in the area of Thornapple and Meadow who lost power for 3 nights. And I think we all understand that PEPCO has to prioritize the repair work that they do. And as we've often commented, the worst case is to be the only person without power, because then you're right at the bottom of the list. And arguably 35 people might have been also relatively down the totem pole. But what also really concerned us was really deep failures of communication within PEPCO. The singular example that was so glaring to me, I was driving around and looking at what was not happening, was when I was driving on Meadow, or near where the site was, where the wires had come down, and I was talking to the external affairs officer at PEPCO, and she was saying, good news, the repair trucks are at 7100 Meadow, and when they finish that, they're going to 7300 Meadow. I said, there are no repair trucks here. She said, oh, but they are there. I said, no, my eyeballs are on the site. I'm telling you, they're not there. So what had happened was a complete breakdown of communication within PEPCO as to communicating between the divisions what was going on and where the problems were. And so it left this very deep concern on our part that the severity of the outage was not, in fact, being communicated, and therefore it was not being given the proper focus or priority. So council, under my name, sent a letter to the president of PEPCO saying how concerned we were, wanting to have a meeting. We finally got an answer back from the head of public affairs, which was basically a kind of a brush off letter. Oh, there's always a lot of work we've got to do after outage, but didn't directly answer the concerns that I had raised in the letter. And so we pushed and wanted to have a face-to-face meeting. This was initially scheduled to happen, I think, at the end of August or early September. Then they blew that off. So finally, tomorrow, we're going to have this meeting, which will be our opportunity to really push home here that they really had a breakdown of internal communication that we think was really serious. And it's not a matter of their communicating to the town, although that's a knockoff effect of this, but it's the fact that inside a Pepco, the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing or was not doing, and that's unacceptable. So anyway, that's the purpose of the discussion tomorrow. And then finally, on the Purple Line, Tambra and Irene and I listened, and also I had a chance to walk around the other day and took pictures and sent it to my colleagues. They have finished virtually all of the construction work behind the 36 homes of the town. The track work. The tracks are laid, but that's at that point they're basically done. The only thing, the tracks are laid, the ballast is in place. Of course, the noise wall is in place. All the sewage is done, and they've put up a number of the towers to hold the catenary wires. So the only thing left is to put in some more towers and ultimately to string the wires. But the actual serious physical civil works is largely completed. So that's good. Tonight we heard again, though a little bit, I would say, softer, a little bit more fuzzy, was that they expect that the Capitol Crescent Trail will be opened spring or summer of 2026. The actual final commercial operation date for the system is not until toward the end of 2027, but most of that time frame is to be taken up with testing, not with construction, but just with testing. But in any event, they expect that they can open up the Capitol Crescent Trail spring, summer 2026. As Todd referred to, we have some issues where we still want some further mitigation for purposes of privacy and light pollution of some families that live right along the ramp that leads up to the bridge across at Pearl Street. We actually have very easy solutions that can be put in place for both of those issues, but we have to know whom we're negotiating with. And the issue is, frankly, when that trail is transferred, who will be the party that we're going to negotiate with? Will we be negotiating and getting this resolved with the Purple Line people and the MTA, or with Montgomery County? So we'll work on that, but ultimately get that solved.
You may want to mention the work on the Elm Street Park and the Capitol Crescent Trail there is supposed to be done before.
That's a good point. Rich is raising this, that again, Todd spoke briefly about this, that there's the next phase of the surface Capitol Crescent Trail work is now going to be initiated, which is basically to put the trail in along 47th Street and also take a bit of Elm Street Park, just a very narrow band. It will require taking down a number of trees, and the council and Todd and our staff have been very involved in reviewing this, including the pine trees that are there along 47th Street in the park. But they will ultimately be planting new canopy trees, a variety of elm, American elm, which are resistant to Dutch elm disease. So eventually we'll have some lovely canopy trees there. And they will save due to our intervention, they will be saving the trees on the west side of 47th Street. Those will not come down, so they will still be helpful. But that portion of the trail will be built and then connect to the portal, where then it will go up the ramp and across to Pearl Street. So the county wants to make sure that they have completed their portion of the trail to tie up with the work that effectively is being built by the contractor, the Purple Line, so that the whole thing is complete in time when it can be open next summer. And that also at the same time, they will be beginning to do the foundational work for redevelopment of the new playground, which is going to be developed on the north side of Elm Street Park. You know, right now we have a rather, frankly, meager playground there, but the Parks Department has put together some very exciting plans for a much enlarged playground, which will be divided into 3 sections for small kids, medium-sized kids, and larger kids. They want to begin work on that as well. And that'll be basically just, if you're in Elm Street Park, it'll still remain to the north side of the boulevard as you're heading up on Elm Street, but will be inside of the new Capitol Crescent Trail that's going to curve around the outside of this playground. So that'll be developed over the next year and a half or so. Okay, anything else that we need to discuss? I think we've covered a lot. All right, well, thank you all very much for attending. Really appreciate it. Meeting adjourned.